At 4:07 a.m., something slammed into my front door hard enough to rattle the picture frames and wake every instinct I had earned overseas and at home. This wasn't a knock. This wasn't even pounding. It was a kick, deliberate, angry, and stupid. I rolled out of bed already moving, adrenaline dumping like I'd been shot out of a cannon. The house was dark except for the soft red glow of the security panel. My hand went to the nightstand out of habit, but I stopped myself. I didn't need it yet. Another kick landed, louder this time. The solid oak door groaned. A woman's voice shrieked through the wood. "Open this door right now. HOA emergency." HOA. At 4 in the damn morning. Before my brain fully caught up, the low, unmistakable rumble came from down the hallway. Then another. Nails clicked softly against tile as Thor and NYX, my two K9s, rose from their beds. They didn't bark. They never barked unless I told them to. Silence was worse. "I know you're home," the voice screamed again. "I need the master key." Master key? The third kick hit, and that's when my camera's auto pulled up on the monitor by the bed. There she was, robe half-tied, hair in curlers, clipboard clutched like a weapon. Deborah Hensley, president of the HOA, self-appointed ruler of the subdivision and terror of trash cans everywhere. She reared back for another kick. I smiled, because Deborah had forgotten something important. This wasn't just my house. This was a working K9 residence, and my dogs were already on duty. I eased toward the hallway, calm and quiet, barefoot on cool tile. Thor, a 110-pound Belgian Malinois built like a missile, took position to my left. NYX mirrored him on the right, her dark coat blending perfectly with the shadows. Their eyes were locked on the door, bodies coiled, waiting for command. Another kick. Harder. Wood cracked. This is HOA business. Open up or you'll be fined. I checked the time again. 4:09 a.m. "Deborah," I said loudly but evenly, my voice carrying through the door. "You're trespassing." She froze. Then she laughed, a shrill, condescending sound. "Don't be ridiculous. I'm the HOA president. I have authority." Authority. That word always told me exactly who I was dealing with. "You have zero authority to be on my property," I replied. "You especially don't have authority to kick my door." She scoffed. "There's a plumbing emergency in Building C. I need the master key to your house. You are required to submit one." I almost laughed out loud. "There's no master key," I said, "and even if there were, I wouldn't be handing it to you." Her face twisted, visible through the camera feed. "You're obstructing HOA operations. Open this door now." Thor's growl deepened, vibrating through the floor. NYX's ears flattened slightly, focused, calculating. Deborah heard it. She leaned closer to the door. "What was that?" I rested my hand on the control panel mounted beside the hallway door. "Deborah," I said, "I'm going to say this once. Step away from my door. Right now." Instead, she kicked again. The door didn't give. Her balance did. She stumbled back a step, furious now, cheeks flushed. "That's it. I'm calling the police and reporting aggressive behavior." I tilted my head, amused. "Please do." She pulled out her phone, hand shaking as she dialed. While she waited, she muttered loudly about lawsuits, fines, liens, every empty threat HOAs love to throw around. Then she made her final mistake. She tried the handle. That was enough. I thumbed the interior speaker switch connected to the exterior intercom. "Deborah." My voice echoed outside, calm and cold. "For your safety, do not attempt to enter this home." She ignored it. The handle turned, and I gave the command. "Stand by." Thor and NYX shifted instantly, muscles tightening, eyes burning with intent. Still silent, still controlled, still waiting. Deborah yanked harder. "This is unacceptable." I flipped on the porch light. Her eyes widened as a reinforced steel door slowly cracked open. Not enough for entry, just enough for her to see what waited on the other side. Two sets of glowing eyes, teeth bared, not barking, not lunging, just watching. Deborah screamed, and somewhere in the distance, sirens began to wail, because she had, in fact, called the police. I smiled wider. She was about to learn exactly what K9s on duty really meant. Deborah Hensley stumbled backward so far she nearly tripped over her own slippers. The clipboard hit the concrete with a hollow slap, paper scattering across the porch like startled birds. Her scream cut off mid-breath when she realized something far worse than barking dogs stood behind that door. Silence. No snarling. No chaos. Just two perfectly still K9s, eyes locked on her like she was prey that hadn't decided whether to run yet. "See control, you animals!" she shrieked, scrambling back until her spine hit the railing. "This is harassment. This is an HOA violation." I didn't move. Thor and NYX didn't move either. I held the door with one hand, leaving it cracked just enough for her to understand the situation without placing her in immediate danger. I said calmly, "You are trespassing on private property and attempting forced entry." She jabbed a shaking finger toward me. "I have the right. The bylaws." "The bylaws don't override state law." I cut in. "And they definitely don't override breaking and entering." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. For the first time since I'd moved into this neighborhood, Deborah Hensley didn't have a ready-made script. The red and blue reflections began flickering across the far end of the street, washing the houses in pulsing color. The sound of sirens grew louder. Deborah latched onto it like a lifeline. "Good. Perfect. The police will deal with you. You are threatening me with attack dogs." I raised an eyebrow. "You kicked my door at 4 in the morning." "That's irrelevant." "It's very relevant." Thor shifted his weight slightly. NYX's tail flicked once, slow and deliberate. Deborah whimpered. I issued a quiet command. "Down." Both dogs obeyed instantly, dropping into controlled crouches, eyes never leaving her. The effect was worse than aggression. They looked like coiled springs. Deborah slid down the railing until she was sitting on the porch steps, breathing fast, phone still clenched in her hand. I demand you restrain them," she stammered. "They are restrained," I replied, "by voice command, which is more than I can say for you." The first patrol car pulled up, tires crunching over gravel. 2 officers stepped out, hands resting near their holsters, not drawn, but ready. Their eyes immediately took in the scene. A disheveled woman on my porch, my door partially open, 2 K9s in perfect formation behind me. "Sir," one officer called out, "can you secure your dogs?" "Absolutely," I said, and snapped my fingers once. "Kennel." Thor and NYX turned as one and padded back down the hallway, disappearing into the interior room without a single sound. The door closed fully behind me with a solid click. Deborah scrambled to her feet, pointing wildly. "Arrest him. He threatened me. He sicked his dogs on me." The officer glanced at her, then at my door. What were you doing here at this hour?" "I'm the HOA president," she said proudly, as if that explained everything. There was an emergency, and he refused to comply. "Emergency?" the second officer asked. "What kind of emergency requires kicking in someone's door at 4 a.m.? She hesitated. "A plumbing issue." "Where?" "Building C." The officer checked his tablet. Building C is 2 streets over. Why would you need access to this residence?" She sputtered. "Because he has the master key." Both officers looked at me. "There's no master key," I said evenly. "She's been told that before. Also, she has no legal right to possess one." The first officer nodded slowly. "Do you have written authorization, a warrant, or consent to enter this property?" Deborah's face flushed a deep, furious red. "I don't need one. HOA rules." The officer cut her off. "HOA rules don't supersede the law." The words hit her like a slap. She crossed her arms, chin raised defiantly. "He has dangerous animals. That's a violation, too. This neighborhood allows pets, not attack dogs." I pulled a folded document from the side table just inside the door and handed it to the officer. "They are certified working K9s registered, insured, and compliant with all local ordinances. I notified the HOA when I moved in." The officer skimmed the paperwork, then handed it back. "Everything checks out." Deborah's eyes widened. "That can't be right. I never approved." "You don't have to," the officer said flatly. For a moment, the only sound was a distant hum of a passing car and Deborah's uneven breathing. Then she straightened her robe and tried a different tactic. "This man is hostile," she said, voice trembling with manufactured fear. "He threatened my safety." The officer glanced at my reinforced door, then at the scuff marks where her shoes had struck it. Why are there fresh kick marks on his door?" She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I knocked." The officer raised an eyebrow. "With your foot?" The silence stretched. Finally, the second officer spoke. "We're going to need you to step off the property." "What?" she screeched. "You're being warned for trespassing," he said. "If you return without permission, you could be cited or arrested." Her jaw dropped. "This is outrageous. I will have your badge numbers." He smiled politely. "They are on my uniform." She huffed, snatched up her scattered papers, and stumped down the steps. But halfway to the sidewalk, she turned back and pointed at me. "This isn't over," she hissed. "The HOA will deal with you." I met her glare without blinking. "Good luck with that." She stormed off, muttering threats under her breath, curlers bobbing with every furious step. The officers lingered a moment longer. "Sorry about the disturbance," one of them said. "If she comes back, call us immediately." "I will," I replied. As they drove away, the street fell silent again. I locked the door, leaned against it, and exhaled slowly. From down the hall, Thor let out a soft huff. NYX patted closer, pressing her head against my leg. "Good work," I murmured, scratching behind her ears. Outside, Deborah Hensley was already plotting her next move. Inside, I was already preparing for it, because I knew one thing for certain. HOA Karens never learn the first time. By sunrise, Deborah Hensley had already launched her counterattack. I knew it before I even opened my email. The notification count was obscene, 37 messages between 5:12 and 7:03 a.m., all from the HOA's official address, each one flagged urgent. Subject line screamed in all caps like a digital tantrum. "Unauthorized security animals, emergency HOA hearing failure to comply. Final notice." I poured coffee, black and strong, and sat at the kitchen table while Thor and NYX lay at my feet, alert but calm. I opened the first email. It was a notice of violation, accusing me of maintaining dangerous and aggressive animals, refusing lawful HOA access, and, my favorite, intimidation of an HOA officer through implied threat of violence. Implied threat. From dogs that never left the house. I scrolled. The second email scheduled an emergency HOA board meeting for that same evening, demanding my attendance and threatening fines, liens, and legal action if I failed to appear. The third attached a revised emergency access policy, hastily drafted and poorly worded, stating that HOA leadership could demand entry to any residence during an association emergency. I actually laughed. Thor lifted his head at the sound, tail thumping once. "They really don't learn," I muttered. By mid-morning, word had spread. Neighbors who previously only waved in passing suddenly found reasons to walk their dogs past my house. A few stopped outright. "You okay?" asked Mr. Alvarez from across the street. "We heard shouting last night." "More like screaming," his wife added. "I'm fine," I said. Deborah had a misunderstanding with reality. They chuckled, but there was tension behind it. Everyone in the subdivision had a Deborah story. Fines for trash cans being out 10 minutes too long. Threatening letters over mailbox decorations. One woman had been cited for an authorized lawn color variation during a drought. The HOA had become less about community and more about control. And Deborah hated losing control. Around noon, I received a knock, this one polite, hesitant. I checked the camera. Mark Delaney, HOA treasurer. I opened the door, dog behind me but out of sight. "Hey," he said awkwardly. "Can we talk?" We sat on opposite sides of the kitchen island while he avoided eye contact. "She's upset," he began. "Shocking," I replied. "She wants to fine you retroactively for noncompliance," he said, "and she's pushing for mandatory key submission." I slid a folder across the counter. "Here's the state statute prohibiting forced key access. Here's the police report from last night." And here's my attorney's card. Mark swallowed. You have an attorney. I had one before I moved in. He sighed. Look, off the record, what she did was insane. But she's calling an emergency vote tonight. She thinks if the board backs her, you'll cave. And if I don't? He hesitated. She wants to escalate. Escalate how? Mark stood. I shouldn't say. That bad? He nodded. Just be careful. After he left, I made a few calls of my own. By the time evening rolled around, I was ready. The HOA meeting took place in the community clubhouse, a beige building that smelled like carpet cleaner and old coffee. I arrived early, dressed casually but clean, with a slim briefcase in hand. Thor and NYX stayed home. Deborah sat at the front table, flanked by two board members who looked deeply uncomfortable. She shot me a venomous glare as I took a seat in the back. We are calling this emergency session to order, she announced sharply. First item, severe violations by homeowner. Before you continue, I said calmly, standing, I'd like to record this meeting. Her eyes narrowed. That is not allowed. It is, I replied. State law permits recording of HOA meetings open to members. I'm a member. Murmurs rippled through the room. Deborah clenched her jaw. Fine. She launched into a long, dramatic retelling of the 4 a.m. incident, portraying herself as a heroic official endangered by a hostile resident and weaponized animals. When she finished, she looked triumphant. Now, she said, we will vote on immediate penalties and forced compliance. I stepped forward and placed my briefcase on the table. Before you vote, I said, I'd like to present evidence. She scoffed. You had your chance. I have it now. I opened the case and began laying items out neatly. First, security footage, time-stamped, showing Deborah kicking my door repeatedly. Gasps. Second, audio, her shouting demand for a master key. Third, the police report noting her trespassing warning. Fourth, legal statute highlighting the illegality of forced entry and mandatory key submission. Finally, I placed down a single sheet of paper. This, I said, is a cease and desist letter drafted by my attorney. If this HOA attempt to fine, harass, or intimidate me further, we will pursue damages. The room was silent. Deborah's face had gone pale. You can't. I can, I said, and I will. One board member cleared his throat. Madam President, perhaps we should table this. No, she snapped. His undermining authority. I leaned in slightly. You don't have authority to break the law. Her voice dropped to a hiss. You think you've won. I think you broke into the wrong house. The vote never happened. The meeting ended early, with the board promising to review policies. Deborah stormed out without another word. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a notification. Motion sensor alert, front yard. I pulled up the live feed. Deborah stood at my gate, phone in hand, photographing my house. I sighed. Wrong move, I murmured, because harassment was one thing. But what she was about to do next, that crossed a line even the HOA couldn't protect her from. I didn't confront Deborah that night. That's the thing people like her never understand. Silence isn't surrender. It's preparation. I saved the footage, tagged a timestamp, and let her take her little pictures like she was collecting Pokemon. Then I went inside, fed Thor and NYX, and sat down with my laptop. By morning, Deborah had escalated again. This time, she went public. A mass HOA email hit every resident's inbox just after 8 a.m., dripping with self-righteous panic. She claimed there was a credible safety threat in the neighborhood. She didn't name me directly, but she didn't have to. Residents are advised to be cautious of certain homes harboring unregistered guard animals and non-compliant security measures. Unregistered, guard animals, non-compliant. Every phrase was carefully chosen to scare without stating anything provably false. Almost. I received 3 text messages before I finished reading it. Are your dogs dangerous? Deborah says someone's at risk. Should we call animal control? I closed my laptop slowly. That was it. False statements intended to harm my reputation? that crossed into defamation territory. I forwarded the email to my attorney, along with the porch photos, the meeting recording, and the earlier police report. His response came 10 minutes later. "She's digging her own grave. Don't interfere." So I didn't. By noon, Deborah had made her next mistake. She contacted animal control. I know because their truck rolled up to my house at 12:47 p.m. 2 officers stepped out, professional and calm. I met them at the gate, paperwork already in hand. "We received a report about aggressive dogs," one said. "Of course you did," I replied pleasantly. I handed over the certifications, training records, vaccination logs, insurance policies, and registration forms. They barely had time to glance before one of them chuckled. "These dogs are better documented than most people," he said. Thor and NYX sat at my sides, perfectly still, eyes forward. "No aggression complaints on file," the other officer added, "and they're within all regulations. Anything else you need?" I asked. They shook their heads. As they left, one paused. "Off the record, you might want to invest in more cameras." "I already have," I said. Deborah wasn't done. At 3 p.m., a city zoning inspector showed up. At 4:30, a fire safety officer. At 6, a noise complaint, filed while my house was silent. Each time, I documented. Each time, the reports came back clean. By evening, the neighborhood was buzzing. Group chats lit up. People started asking questions. And once they started questioning Deborah, things unraveled fast. Mrs. Patel posted screenshots of threatening emails she'd received over flower pots. Mr. Alvarez shared video of Deborah measuring his fence with a ruler. Someone else uploaded a recording of her screaming at a contractor. By nightfall, the narrative had shifted. Deborah wasn't protecting the neighborhood. She was terrorizing it. At 9:12 p.m., my doorbell rang. I checked the camera. Deborah again. This time, she looked different. No curlers. No clipboard. Just anger and desperation. I didn't open the door. "Please," she said, voice tight. "We need to talk." I activated the intercom. "You've said enough for one lifetime." "This has gone too far," she snapped. "You're turning people against me." "You did that yourself." She leaned closer to the camera. "If you don't stop this, I will personally make sure you regret it." I smiled. "Thank you." "For what?" "For saying that on camera." Her eyes widened. She stepped back, then did something astonishingly stupid. She reached for the gate latch. "Trespass." "Again." "Deborah," I said calmly, "step away from my property." "I'm not afraid of your dogs," she spat. "You should be afraid of the law." She ignored me and pushed the gate open. I didn't release the dogs. I called the police. They arrived in under 5 minutes. This time, there was no warning. She was cited for harassment and trespassing. The officer recognized her. He said wearily, "You were warned already." She exploded. "This is persecution." They escorted her off the property while she screamed about lawsuits and conspiracies. I stood on my porch, Thor and NYX behind me, calm as statues. As a patrol car pulled away, my phone buzzed. New email, HOA special session, emergency vote of no confidence. I leaned down and scratched Thor's ears. "Looks like it's finally happening," I murmured. But Deborah Hensley wasn't the kind of person who accepted defeat quietly. And I had the sinking feeling that, with her back against the wall, she was about to do something truly reckless. Something that would end her reign for good. The emergency HOA meeting was scheduled for Saturday morning. Deborah Hensley didn't sleep Friday night. I knew because she emailed the entire neighborhood at 2:18 a.m., subject line screaming, "Illegal coup attempt. Know your rights." By the time the sun came up, replies were already stacking beneath it. Calm, factual, and devastating. "Please stop emailing us threats. We've seen the police reports. You don't speak for the neighborhood anymore." I arrived at the clubhouse 10 minutes early. This time, the parking lot was full. That had never happened before. People stood in clusters, whispering. Some nodded at me. A few clapped quietly as I passed. Word travels fast when a bully finally overreaches. Inside, Deborah sat alone at the front table. No clipboard, No allies. Her posture was rigid, jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. She didn't look at anyone, just stared straight ahead like the room was full of enemies. Mark Delaney called the meeting to order. As vice president, he said, I'm presiding over today's session due to a motion of no confidence filed against the current president. Deborah shot to her feet. This is illegitimate. Mark didn't flinch. The bylaws require a vote. That's what we're here to do. The floor was open for comments. Hands went up immediately. Mrs. Patel stood first. For 2 years, I've been fined for imaginary violations. I was threatened with a lien over potted plants. Applause. Mr. Alvarez followed. She tried to force her way into a neighbor's home at 4 a.m. That alone should disqualify her. More applause. A young couple shared how Deborah had harassed them weekly over their service dog. Then Mark looked at me. Would you like to speak? I stood, but kept it brief. I don't want power, I said. I want peace. I want my home to be my home. What happened to me could happen to anyone here. Deborah laughed bitterly. You're manipulating them. No, I replied. You did that all on your own. The vote was swift. Unanimous. Deborah Hensley was removed as HOA president effective immediately. The room erupted, not in cheers, but in relieved exhalations, like a storm breaking. Deborah remained standing, trembling. You can't do this, she whispered. Mark nodded sadly. We already did. Security escorted her out, not police, just 2 volunteers. She didn't fight them. She looked small. I thought it was over. I was wrong. That afternoon, as I was walking through an NYX, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. You think you won, Deborah's voice hissed. But I still have friends. I doubt that, I said. You ruined my life, she snapped. Those dogs of yours. Someone's going to get hurt. Maybe then people will listen. I stopped walking. That's a threat, I said quietly. She hung up. I saved the call log and forwarded it to my attorney and the police. At dusk, a strange car idled across the street from my house. Then another. I checked the cameras. 2 men, late 20s, one pointing at my gate. I called it in. The police arrived fast, faster than the men expected. Turns out Deborah had told them I was harboring illegal guard dogs and that they were authorized by the HOA to inspect my property. That claim didn't go well for them. They were trespassed and warned. Deborah was charged later that night with filing false reports. The next morning, Animal Control returned, this time with a thank you note and an apology. You've got quite the paper trail, the officer said. She won't be bothering you again. He was right. By Monday, Deborah's name was removed from the HOA website. By Tuesday, her access to HOA funds was frozen pending audit. By Wednesday, the neighborhood had a new interim board and a moratorium on fines. And by Thursday, I saw the moving truck. Deborah Hensley stood on her driveway, arms crossed, watching strangers box up her life. She saw me walking the dogs. For a moment, I thought she might say something. She didn't. She just looked away. Thor tugged gently on the leash, eager to move on. So was I, because some battles aren't won with force. They're won with patience, evidence, and letting people show exactly who they are. And Deborah, she showed everyone. The neighborhood felt different after Deborah left. Not louder, not celebratory, just quieter. The kind of quiet you don't notice until the noise is gone. No more fluorescent orange violation stickers slapped onto mailboxes. No more mass emails written in all caps. No more rulers measuring fences or photos of trash cans sent at dawn. The HOA clubhouse doors stayed closed for a week while the interim board worked behind the scenes, and for the first time since I'd moved in, no one was afraid to leave a bike in their driveway. On Saturday morning, I sat on my porch with a mug of coffee while Thor and NYX lounged in the sun, relaxed but alert out of habit. A couple of neighbors walked by and waved. Someone called out, "Morning," and meant it. It felt earned. The interim HOA board sent out a message later that day. Short, professional, human, effective immediately. Emergency access policies are suspended pending legal review. No homeowners required provide keys. All fines issued in the last 12 months will be audited and, where appropriate, rescinded. People replied with thank yous, some with relief, one with a crying emoji. A week later, there was a knock at my door. A real knock. I checked the camera anyway. Mark Delaney stood there, holding a cardboard box. I opened the door. "Hey, hope this is okay," he said. "We're returning property." Inside the box were folders, USB drives, a ledger. "What's this?" I asked. "Everything Deborah kept," he said. "She was meticulous, also reckless." I flipped through the contents and found exactly what I expected. Emails, fines, notes, some with personal commentary scribbled in the margins. Hostile, defiant, needs pressure. She was planning to escalate on a lot of people. Mark said quietly, "Not just you." I nodded. "What are you going to do?" "We're dissolving the board and reconstituting it under a management company. Less power, more oversight." "Good." Before he left, Mark hesitated. "You didn't have to fight her like you did." I smiled faintly. Someone had to stop her. That night, I walked the dogs along the edge of the neighborhood, where the streetlights gave way to darkness and crickets filled the silence. Thor moved with his usual confidence. NYX stayed close, brushing my leg now and then. I thought about how close things had come to going wrong, not because of danger, but because of ego, because someone thought authority meant ownership, that rules could replace respect. They never do. A month passed. Then, too, the HOA settled into something resembling what it was supposed to be: boring, predictable, optional. Meetings were sparsely attended. Emails were rare. The loudest controversy involved whether the clubhouse coffee machine should be replaced. I received a final update from my attorney. Deborah Hensley had accepted a settlement in exchange for dropping all claims. It included a non-disparagement clause and a permanent no-contact order. She wasn't allowed within 2 blocks of my home. I printed the email and filed it away. On a warm evening in late summer, the neighborhood hosted its first block party in years. Folding tables, grilled food, kids chasing each other with glow sticks. Someone asked if Thor and NYX could come. "They are working dogs," I said. "We know," Mrs. Patel smiled, "but they are also heroes." I brought them out on leashes. They sat calmly while kids admired them from a respectful distance. Thor accepted a scratch behind the ears. NYX leaned into my leg, content. No fear, no tension, just community. Later that night, as the party wound down and people drifted home, I stood in my driveway and looked down the street. Same houses, same sidewalks, different feeling. I thought back to that first kick on my door at 4 a.m. The anger, the entitlement, the certainty that power came from a title. Deborah had forgotten something simple. A home isn't a line item. It's a boundary, and boundaries matter. Inside, I secured the house, ran a final camera check, and gave the dogs their last command of the night. Off duty. They relaxed instantly, tails wagging, energies shifting from vigilance to play. Thor grabbed a toy. NYX bounded after him. I laughed softly. The house was safe. The neighborhood was calm. And for the first time since I'd moved in, I slept through the night. No kicks, no demands, just silence, the good kind.